یارو با یه ویدیو 100K شد. با یه ویدیوش هم اینه. I made the God of War remake because Sony doesn't want to. واقعا دلم میخواد ویدیوشو ببینم به خاطر همین قضیه. بذار ببینم زیرنویس فارسی میتونم براتون آن کنم. اینقدر نت ریده که گذاشته. نه اوکی. ساب تایتل براتون فارسی میذارم چون گناده بالاخره آدم هایی هستن که همچنان نمیرن و انگلیسی یاد بگیرن با اینکه اشتباه خیلی بزرگی میکنید ولی خب همچنان هستید. حاجی چقدر حرف زدن شبیه سمت ایرانی و هندی هست.
Sony doesn't even care. Fuck it. I'm gonna do it myself. Or at least I'm gonna try. I started with a base mesh. I sculpted his head to look more like Kratos and he...
چقدر سریع رفتیم تو ویدیو و چقدر تمیز رفتیم تو ویدیو. بچه‌ها زیرنویس هست میتونیم ببینید دیگه اینا پایینه. اگه یه درصد نمیفهمید زیرنویس رو بخون.
Have waited enough for the original God of War to get a remake, but all we get is just a remaster. It seems like Sony doesn't even care. Fuck it. I'm gonna do it myself.
مثلا 1080 جدی میکشه. واقعا 1080 دوست دارم ببینم. میکشی یا نه؟ مثل اینکه داری میکشی.
Or at least I'm gonna try. I started with a base mesh. I sculpted his head to look more like Kratos, and here we have Kratos who's on drugs. I sculpted his body, gave him some muscle, drew some veins and details here and there. After adding all the body details, now it was time for some texture. I added a white painting for his skin, and of course we can't forget about the details. Then I drew the iconic red tattoo on his body. In the original God of War, Kratos had this extra tattoo in his left arm, which is removed later on in the sequel game. But I wanted to be faithful to the War. Kratos had this extra tattoo in his left arm, which is removed later on in the sequel game. But I wanted to be faithful to the original design as much as possible, so I painted that as well. Ladies and gentlemen, Kratos! Oh, but he's still naked. So let's make him some...
آقا نشون داد.
For the clothes and accessories, I have used a bunch of different techniques. I used the cloth simulation to make the skirt, selected some faces, extruded them outward, wrapped some bandages and chains around his forearm. I modeled some sandals. Alright, I'm not gonna pretend that I know everything. To me, modeling is just about pushing and pulling vertices until it looks good enough. So...
بچه نپرسید چرا زیرنویس نداره که حقیقتا نمیتونم نظری بدم.
So yeah. After I finished modeling the accessories, I've brought them into Substance Painter and textured them as well. I even tried to paint the smaller details like the blood stains, the dirt, the stitches and stuff to make it more believable. Our model is now pretty much done.
حاجی این گادافور یکه این گادافوری که ساخته حالا اونقدرم
But it doesn't move. You know, in order to make a character move into you have to utilize something called rigging. And I'm pretty sure you don't know what rigging is. You do. Alright, I'm gonna explain it anyway.
حاجی عینکشو دقت کردین با انیمیشن چشش عوض میشه.
Rigging is basically the part where you put some bones inside of your mesh so then you'd be able to move it. You can also customize the shapes of the bones to your liking so it's more manageable and less like your worst nightmare. For that purpose, I'm gonna use the Blender Rigify add-on to make it easier. I also made the sandals wrinkle when bent. It's a small detail, but that will be cool since we'll have close-ups later on. Now Kratos is able to move. Let's go! For the skirt, I added a cloth simulation.
نمیره خدایی داشت بحث این نیست من خوابم ببره یا نه. آخه کسم خوله مگه همچین کس شری رو سرچ کنم. من نبودی که چی الان شب خوابت نبره. الان من بترسم که چی بشه. کس خول بشین زندگی درست زندگی کن. کس خول شدی باور کن بیچاره داره مدگل و این چیزا میبینی. یکم زندگی کن بفهم زندگی چیه. کس خول میشی بس فردا بهت باز یه سینیور مثل منم بهت میگه کس خول.
To make it move realistically, but I failed again and again and again and again. I found this tutorial from Edin Spiegel and it worked. But when Kratos turns around, it messes up again! Leave it alone. It's not gonna move a lot anyway. I was aiming for recreating the intro of God of War 1 when Kratos jumps down from the mountain and that's about 10 shots.
حاجی یکی از بهترین صحنه‌های چیز بود. یکی از بهترین صحنه‌های بازی بچگی من بود خدایی.
I'll start with the menu, where Kratos is standing in the middle of fire. I just add Kratos to the scene, download some fire footage from Artlist, remove the watermark. Well, this is my first...
حاجی چقدر تمیز. لازم وایسا.
I just add Kratos to the scene, download some fire footage from art list, remove the watermark.
حاجی چقدر تمیز واترمارک رو ریموو کرد.
This is my first video. Yeah, I mean, of course I'm broke like basically everyone when starting YouTube. I then dropped the fire footage behind Kratos, added some lights, and gave him a subtle animation to simulate a flickering fire effect. If you look at the original game, Kratos is just standing with his eyes closed doing nothing, but I wanted to add more drama to it. So I animated Kratos as if he's remembering his past memories and feeling regret. Like when we think about our ex, I remember how stupid we were.
حاجی واقعا دمت گرم.
I also thought it would be cool for his memories to show in the background, so I decided to use some of the original cutscenes from the game and blend them with the flames in After Effects. After adding the God of War title, the text, and the buttons, our first shot is pretty much done. Now it's time for the most difficult shot. The cliff shot. Yeah, I grew a bit. It was a very long project. I started with gathering some rock scans from Sketchfab, but I couldn't find anything close to the Greek structure behind Kratos, so I've got an idea. I opened the game on my PC, played a little bit, and then went to the stage where you can see the statues. I extracted the 3D models and imported them into Blender. I added more resolution, sculpted some details, and modeled the new shield. Because the first one sucked. I have watched the original models closely and tried to replicate the details as close as possible to the original models of the game.
اینا واقعا سخته. این پاره شده واقعا پاره شده. به همین راحتی نیست.
I then dropped them into Substance Painter for some texturing. I
واقعا
started
پاره
painting
شده.
the smaller details on the models because it's much faster and easier than sculpting them in 3D. After I finished detailing the statue, I gave it a rocky material with some dirt and then painted some golden parts here and there. I then did the same thing with the gate and the structure, just painting some bump details, adding some patterns, cracks, dirt, imperfections, painting some gold, changed some colors, add more variation, and we're done. I know, genius, right?
حاجی جر خورد اینو بسازه جدی.
An Oscar for this. Now it's time to make the scene. I dropped a sky image for the background, then I placed the rock scans and the models I created into the scene. This part was really a big deal for me, since I never made an exterior environment before, so everything from the mountains to the 3D assembling was a learning curve. I watched countless tutorials, including Martin Klubner's
حالا وی پی ان ما رید. این داره تمیز درست میکنه، ما نتمون نمیکشه ببینیم.
environment course, and I searched through
خدایا مرسی که هستی، مرسی که این زندگی رو به ما دادی.
tons of reference images to capture the right mood. Since I was working on a budget, I had to rely on free resources for skies. I even used AI to generate references.
چقدر AI تمیز جنریت کرد حاجی. نگاه خوشگله. ولی ادیت ویدیوش هم خیلی خفنه. سلام
There was a lot of experimenting and trial and error, but seeing it all come together made it worth it. Wait, it looks like shit. I mean, everything is flat and boring. Oh, I know how to fix it. With light.
بابا نرین دیگه دارم ویدیو میبینم.
I masked some clouds.
نمیذارم 720 ریدم توی زندگی، نمیذاره ویدیو ببینیم ما.
Added them into the scene, added some gradients between the mountains to fake depth, placed some volumetric clouds in the foreground, and here comes the magic of lighting. I start with adding an HDRI image, and wow, it already looks amazing. To make it more interesting, I'm gonna adjust the effects and
هیچ وقت دیگه کیفیت نور رو نمیارم پایین.
the clouds
چقدر
further.
تغییر
I
کرد
added more
باز.
lights to the scene to make the details pop even more. I even added some fog with a subtle animation to make it move slightly. Now it looks less like shit, which is good enough.
حاجی این کاری که داره تکی میکنه رو یه کمپانی به زور میسازه.
By the way, this massive environment is just some rocks and planes floating around outside the camera view. And that is the first rule of VFX. As long as no one notices, you never fail. To me, Kratos' eyes were too lifeless, so I added two small point lights in front of his eyes to make him look more tearful, and it looks amazing if you ask me. We certainly don't want Kratos to stand like Kate Winslet in the movie Titanic, so let's give him some movements. I have spent about 6 hours animating these few seconds. I really hate keyframe animating. I also added some wind.
پاره شده، جدی پاره شده. 6 ساعت وقت گذاشته که دستش اینا رو بتونه جمع کنه. اینطوری خیلی وقت گذاشته جدی.
To make this curse move.
نگاه.
If you pay attention, you can see there are two crows flying around in the scene in the original game. For that, I found this model in Sketchfab, which was free by the way. I imported it into Blender and it looks like a bird who's trying to bully you for some reason. Subscribe! I duplicated the model after the animation and then made them follow a path. For my shot, I wanted the birds to fly straight from where the camera is and cause the camera to wiggle a little because I think it will make it much cooler.
حاجی الان دختره تو اینستا میگن کریتوس که سیکس پک نداره اینجا، چرا کریتوس انقدر ضعیفه؟ بابا به قرآن کسی که زورش زیاده سیکس پک نداره. به قرآن تو بری الان وزنه برداره رو ببینی همشون یه پک هم ندارن، کلا شکمن. زور با هیکل خوب واقعا یکی نیست بچه‌ها.
And with that, the second shot is finished. In the original, the transition from the menu to the game is quite simple. The fire just fades out. But for my remake, I wanted to add more depth to the moment. So instead of fire just disappearing, I created this mask to make it slowly extinguish, as if the flames being sniffed out, leaving only embers.
حاجی خیلی سری داره میگه ولی پاره داره. قشنگ من حس کردم جر خورده اینا رو ساخته.
Rising to the sky. The rest of the shots were much easier. For this shot where Kratos is looking down the abyss, I just changed the camera position. The rock under his feet didn't have much detail, so I scattered a bunch of smaller rocks on the surface to make it more interesting. And with that, our third shot is finished. For this shot where Kratos raises his foot, I changed the camera position again.
یکی بهترین صحنه‌های بازی دنیاه به نظرم کریتوس اینجا میپره پایین.
In the original scene, you can see those pebbles fall after Kratos lifts his heel. So I added some small rocks and pushed them forward using
چه دیتیلی گذاشته ناموسا.
an invisible box. And with that, our fourth shot
قشنگ
is done. For
ارزش
the shots where
گذاشته
Kratos is
براش.
falling, I had very cool ideas by using AI. Well, not exactly, it's not AI, those are called modifiers. You pose your character into the desired position, select the body parts that you want them to move, and then add a noise modifier, and it's done. Oh my god, just imagine Kratos jumping from the cliff like this. This is too strong, I have to lower the intensity, and there you go.
درست شد.
For the rocks behind him, I didn't want to model a whole mountain and make Kratos fall from it. It'll take too much time and processing power. But I had some tricks under my sleeve. Instead, I added a slender, scaled it, used a displacement modifier on it, applied a rocky texture on it, and then made it rotate along the x-axis. I animated the fog to move up.
حاجی واقعا کارش درسته. نگاه چیکار کرد برای اینکه دیتیل کلی لود نکنه، دهنش سرویس نشه، رندرش طول بکشه، گرافیکش به چخ بره، همه چیش اومده یه دایره طوری ساخته که هی میچرخه. انگار کریتوس فکر کنم ثابت این هی میچرخه.
Upwards and gave the camera a shaking animation. And that's enough to sell the illusion of Kratos falling. Remember.
حاجی کریتوس تو ویدیوش نمیپره پایین، در واقع یه جا ثابت، اون پشتیه داره میچرخه.
As long as no one fails, it'll never notices. Wait, for the rest of the shots it was basically the same scene, I just changed the camera position. But for the close-up shots I made some subtle facial animations, as if Kratos closes his eyes and accepts his fate. I mean, it's barely noticeable, but I thought it would be a cool detail to have. And finally, the ocean. I dropped a plane, added the ocean modifier, made some water material, and then used the same rocks I used in this scene and scattered them all over the surface. And finally, I added three levels of clouds, each of which is weaker than the previous one, so the fog gradually disappears. And with that, the final shot is done. To enhance the quality even further, I dropped them into DaVinci Resolve for some color grading. For the mood of the game, I was actually looking for something dark and sad. I used this image as my reference.
چقدر حاجی کریتوس قدیم واقعا خفنه.
You know, color grading isn't just about making something look cool. It's about feeling. I wasn't just pushing sliders, I was trying to capture Kratos was depressed and disappointed.
خشونت
And I wanted the colors to
میزنه.
reflect that. And after over 3 months of modeling, texturing,
3 ماه طول کشید.
rigging, animating, rendering, post-processing. Make sure you subscribe.
گفته بعد این سابسکرایب سابش بکنیم حقیقتا، بعد ادامه ویدیو رو ببینیم.
But first, enjoy the first look of the God of War remake.
حاجی ریمیکش الان میخواد پخش کنه. میخوام ببینم جدی چه دلم میخواد قبلش گاد آف وار 1 رو ببینیم. این چیه؟ وایس گاد آف وار 1 استارتینگ چی بهش میگن؟ مثلا استارتینگ میزنم ببینیم چی میاد. اوپنینگ اینه. حاجی این قدیمیشه اصلا. کانال آندرستند اوکی. حاجی بازیشو نگاه. استارت میکنیم. قبلا استارت میکردیم اینطوری بود. کیفیت رو نگاه. 240 بالاترین نشه. ما توی پلی استیشن با این کیفیت میدیدیم ذوق میکردیم. کاتسینش آره. حاجی ما با این کیفیت میدیدیم ذوق میکردیم. من با عشق این بازی 2 بار تموم کردم. بعد این برای موقع میدونی چه کیفیتیه؟ پشمات میریزه. صحنه رو دیدین دیگه. حالا بریم اینو ببینیم. حالا مقایسه کنیم. بابا اصلا مین منو رو نگاه.
The gods of Olympus have abandoned me.
خدا یکاش یه آرزو دیگه میکردم. قیافه دهنش اینجوری. بابا گوسپام شد حاجی، موام سیخ شد. دیتیل سنگو نگاه.
And Kratos
حاجی
cast
سیخ شد
himself
دیدید
from
موهای
the
ترم سیخ.
highest mountain in all of Greece. After 10 years of suffering, 10 years of endless nightmares, it would finally come to an
سرشونه ها رو به نظر.
end. Death would be his escape from madness.
یکم ضعیف بود ولی به عنوان یه نفر خفنه. حاجی دمش گرم. سابسکرایب فور پارت 2 100% برادر 100% واقعا زیاد شد. بعد این آخه چرا من باید برم دستم خورد به بک. حاجی چنلش علی فیلم ورکسه، خیلی ویدیوش خفن بود خدایی. دریم کام ترو، خیلی ویدیوش خفن بود جدی. حقیقتا با اینکه به ما نیازی نداره ولی اگه خواستی این چنلشه، اینم لینک ویدیوش. خیلی خفن بود جدی، پشمام ریخته. دمش حلالش، این ویو حلالش، 100 کیش حلالش، لوحش حلالش، نوش جونش. کیا کامنت گذاشتن؟ چنل های بزرگی هم برسن 200 که حساب کامنت گذاشته براش.